Welcome to episode 11 of the A Free Spirit Life podcast.
Up is where I wanna go. To be free, to feel free, to be free.
Hi there, I'm Shannon Kinney-Duh, and I'm so happy you're here today. I'm really excited to share this conversation with you. My guest, Stephanie Mohr, is an Ayurvedic practitioner, a yoga teacher, and a mom to 3 children. And she teaches us today how to find out your body type. Ayurveda is a practice that's been around for 5,000 years. It's considered a sister science to yoga, and really it teaches us how to understand the nature of things and really how to understand the nature of your own life. So in this conversation today, Stephanie shares how she discovered Ayurveda and how she combined her love of cooking and also her discovery that when she pushed herself too far and she started having physical ailments, she realized the power of stress, and that really led her to the healing power of Ayurveda. And I love this conversation because she teaches you how to find out your body type and how to do some really simple things to help bring your life and your body back to balance. In particular, we talk about this season, the season of autumn, as we're getting ready for winter, and you'll find it to be so helpful as you learn more about what you might be experiencing when you feel really drained, when you're feeling taxed or burned out. A lot of this discussion today will help you start to learn how using food and the practices in Ayurveda can help really bring your mind, body, spirit back to balance. And I even asked Stephanie the question, does balance truly exist? And I love her answer. I think you're going to really love this show today. So enjoy. And for more information, you can visit the show notes. Go to my website, afreespiritlife.com/11, which is the number of this show. Stephanie is sharing with us a dosha quiz. Dosha is your body type, so you'll get to take the quiz to find out what body type you truly are. And she shares some other amazing wisdom that I think you're going to love that teach you a little bit more about Ayurveda and what we talk about today. And join us on Facebook. If you look up groups, A Free Spirit Life Community on Facebook, where we're sharing in the discussion and we're talking about things, if you're a hangry kind of a person and you're hungry all the time, or if you feel like you're lightheaded or get headaches when you're hungry, or maybe you need a little bit more movement, a little more fire in your digestive system. We're talking about all of that in our Facebook group. And as Stephanie shares in the show, this is just yet another tool that you can add to your tool belt of self-discovery and healing. Really, this is about learning who you are in a deeper way and learning the practice of self-healing. Enjoy the show, and I can't wait to see you on Facebook. Hi, Steph. I'm so happy to have you and that we have this time together. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Can you tell a little bit more about who you are and what you do and what stage of life you're in?
Absolutely. So, how do I begin? I am a mother of 3 kids. I suppose that's a good place to start. My oldest daughter is a freshman at KU this year. And then I have a son who is 16, a junior in high school. And then my youngest is an 8th grader. He just turned 14. So I'm a mom of 3 kids. I own my own business. It's called Go With Steph, LLC, and it's focused on healthy cooking, healthy eating, yoga, meditation, Ayurveda. Has lots of different facets and parts to it, which keeps me on my toes and keeps me really interested. I've been married for 23 years to my husband, Jason, and I have 2 dogs who I adore and who keep me also very busy. So I just have a super busy family life, and it's hectic. It's fun. It's the stage of having big kids. So that's pretty exciting. I had a corporate job for a short time because I thought that would be easier to just show up, work, get paid, and come home. And it turned out that didn't work out for me at all. So I'm back to owning my own business, which is really fun. And that's what I'm really focused on right now, and trying to figure out how to manage my family and my business and take care of myself all at the same time.
I had to take a deep breath when I heard you talking about having older kids. I mean, thinking about there's already a college student and you've got high school and middle school and 2 dogs. I got a new dog a couple months ago. So I with the 3 kids and the dog, and I'm like, oh, and running your own business. I just I'm sure that's what drew us together. We relate. But also having older kids, I mean, it's probably hard to even remember the earlier stages, but how has it changed, as far as work and family balance, having older kids?
That is a great question. And I actually think of this often. I have 2 sisters I have 3 sisters altogether, but 2 of my sisters have young kids right now, and we're with them fairly often. And I try to help them when I can, here and there. And to be totally honest, I barely remember what it was like with the little kids. And I loved every minute of it. And I do feel pretty present in each moment. But it's so interesting to look back. And a lot of times I look back and think, I don't know how I did that. And because when my kids were little, I had a catering business, and that's a little bit more of my story. I've kind of always owned my own business for the most part, but when I had my catering business, let me back up just one more little bit. Before I started my catering business, I was working for my dad at our family restaurant. So I had lots of cooking, restaurant, serving, managing a business experience from working for my dad. And my mom was always a cook. She loved to bake. She was a nurse, actually, but she loved to bake, and she was always making cakes and cookies for people. And I wanted to get out of the restaurant business and have children, and I thought I can totally take my work into my house, and I'll just work out of my home, and I can just do catering out of my house while I'm having babies, and I can make it really flexible and make it work for me, and I can work as much as I want or not work too much. And actually that worked out really well. So I started catering, and I had my 3 children over about a 5-year span. And my first child, Haley, my daughter, was so easy. She would sit on the floor in the kitchen and play for hours. It was really remarkable. So she would play on the kitchen floor for hours while I would cook and prepare food. And then I would get a babysitter to come hang out at the house so that I could work. And have her be taken care of. And I just kind of continued that program through having 2 more kids. I catered these enormous weddings when I was 8 months pregnant with my 3rd child. And those are the kinds of things I look back on and say, oh my gosh, what was I thinking and how did I do that? But I just was in the mode. I worked and I loved working. Believe it or not, I was doing a fair amount of yoga, and that was helping me keep everything going. And I just was in full on fire, power. I can get this done. I can do everything. I can lay down with my kids at night. I can work all day while my kids play at my feet. And
yes.
I was a little bit of a crazy person, but it suited me. It worked for me, And then remarkably, as the kids got older, it got harder. So my business grew and my kids were growing, and I just started to break in half a little bit. And this was over, I would say probably at the 10-year mark. So at the time, my kids were probably 8, 6, and 5, something like that. And they were all in school, but I could not manage the schedule. So I ended up selling my catering business. And that's when I went to Ayurveda school and tried to figure out how to incorporate my cooking and yoga and meditation into healthy living. And that sent me on a whole nother track of excitement and learning, but also confusion. I was like, oh boy, now what do I do? How do I make all this work? So anyway, back to your question, my life is so different now with my big kids. I have one out of the house. I have one driving, and then I have one middle schooler. And, and I think that's why, to be honest, for me, my corporate job didn't work, because we would all get out the door just fine, but I wouldn't get home until about 5:30. And that time between 3 and 5:30 ended up to be really important in my family and in my house. And I just felt like I was always behind. I was coming home. I was, trying to get the practices figured out and dinner figured out. And when am I going to exercise? And I felt selfish if I was going for a walk as soon as I got home, when I've already missed 2 hours of their afternoon or something like that. Because with the teenagers, I feel like you have to be home. You have to be around even more. So, the journey of, working when the kids were little to the journey of working with the kids are big. For me, I just have to keep touching base with what is working for our family and what's working for me. And I'm just so happy to be working at home again. I didn't realize how much it was affecting me, not being home. Plus I'm just a very, I think I'm an entrepreneurial person at heart, and it just feels good to be back in my own space, making the decisions and calling the shots and being in charge.
Right. Oh, I'm so glad you shared that, because, I'm at the 10-year mark. My oldest is going to turn 10. So my kids are 10, 6, and 4. And, we have a lot in common that way. And I love the visual you said. You felt like you were breaking in half. Because, I think that what I hear from your story that you shared is this deep listening. Like, you had these moments where you were caught up and you tried to, I think each stage, it does that to us, right? We have to kind of adapt to the new season, to the new stage of motherhood or life. And it sounds like that's what you've done all the way up to where you are now. It's like this. Have you always listened to your heart? I mean, obviously there had been moments where you had to kind of break in half before you listened, but you've kind of, in a sense, what I hear you saying is you've learned how to let go of things because you know what your priorities are. How have you done that? Or how did you discover that, you can let go of this particular job or this working so much for a little more, like you said, manageable schedule and family time? Like, what's brought you to this point where you just are, as you said, more present and listening to what you and your family need?
That's a great question. And I think the answer is kind of multifaceted, because if I am totally honest with you, I feel like I have a really strong intuition. So I do, and I am very, with my yoga practice and stuff like that, I feel like I've been in my, I don't want to sound like wonky or weird, but I'm pretty in touch with my body and what my messages my body is giving me, and my breath. And I notice when I'm stressed or, when I'm having anxiety, I can feel it in my body and my breath. But I'll be, like I said, I'll be totally honest. I would push and push and push beyond that first. And so my nature is to push and to keep going, even though I know I need to take a break. That's my nature. And especially when my kids were little, I did that, and I kept pushing, and I knew in the backdrop, in my internal, like the deepest part of me, knew that I was not going to keep this up for very long. But the fire in me said, oh, Steph, just come on. Let's keep going a little bit more. We can do this. We can finish this. We just got to get through this. We just got to get through that. We just got to get through this. And then we can rest. And so I did. I was kind of doing the listening and pushing at the same time. And I think everybody has to kind of find their own balance that way. I have friends and sisters who their limit is way before mine. Like they get one little message and they're down. They're like, you know what? I can't do that today. I'm feeling overwhelmed. And the competitive part of me is like, I'm kind of always amazed that they have the control and I don't know exactly how to call it, but that ability to make a decision to stop right then when I'm like, I tend to push first. I'll push a little bit more and then I will relax and rest and stop. So it's kind of a combo of things. And I think everyone, and this kind of brings us into the Ayurveda conversation, because I'm a full-on pitta person. I'm motivated, I'm fiery, I like to be in charge. I'm a natural take charge leader type of person. I'm pretty good, I think, at thinking of other people's needs and helping them figure out what they need to do. So it's really natural for me to keep on going. Now, some other people, like maybe a kapha type person, moves a little bit slower, has a little less fire. They're more comfortable in a quiet environment where they feel they like to stay grounded all of the time, whereas I kind of like to operate in the heat a little bit. They like to operate in the grounded place, and then vata is in the middle, and we can talk more about these doshas later, but vata is the airy type where they're constantly moving and they will keep going and keep going, but they break down just a little bit earlier than a pitta person might. A pitta person generally has a little bit more length of endurance, where a vata person, will move really fast, but they burn out a little bit quicker. And anyway, I don't know if that's making sense. But
Oh yeah. Well, let's go ahead and explain to people, because this stuff I love. I love this Ayurveda talk, and I think it's so important when people learn at least what their major body type is, because of all that you just said. It's fascinating, and also I think it affirms. So there's not something wrong with you if you have the pitta and the fire. Like, it's good to know that about yourself, that you're gonna operate in a different way, and then that affects what you eat and what season and all of that. So why don't you explain to us a little more about what Ayurveda is, and how. Talk about the doshas a little bit and how we can find out which type we are.
Okay. So Ayurveda is a very, thousands of years old holistic health system. Ayurveda means the knowledge of life. Veda means like knowledge or knowing, and Ayu means life and understanding the nature of things. So the nature of your body, the nature of the seasons, the nature of food, the nature of exercise, all of these things can be looked at through the eyes of Ayurveda, because Ayurveda is based on the elements: earth, fire, water, space, and air. And so Ayurveda they also call it like a sister science to yoga, because yoga really helps you tune in and listen to the nature of your body and the nature of what you need. So the way that, so then we've tried to figure out, we have like this toolbox of, we call them the doshas, and they're pitta, vata, and kapha. So vata is the air, just to make it very simple here. Vata is the air, a representation of the air element. It's actually air and ether. Pitta is representation of fire element, fire and water. And then kapha is representation of earth and water. So if you just want to remember like the top three things, I would say vata is air, pitta is fire, and kapha is earth. And one thing that I want to say that I feel is very important is that we have all of these doshas within us, and we have all of the elements within us, just like the air has all the elements, a piece of wood has all the elements, a blade of grass has all the elements represented within them. And so our bodies also have all of the elements. But in general, normally you have one that is a higher expression. So like for me, it's Pitta. I'm a little bit higher in the fire element than I am in the earth or the air elements. But you have all three of them in you all the time. So like you said, we want to use these as tools. We're not judging. We're not making a bunch of rules. We're just noticing that this is an expression of how our mind works, what our behavior is, how our physical body is, how our emotional response is. And we can kind of look at that with our little toolbox of the doshas and help balance that way. So, for example, I was talking about my pushing and listening at the same time. That's like my fire and earth. It's like the fire and the earth are working together, and my fire is still driving me, but the earth element within it is saying, okay, that's fine. You can keep going, but at some point I'm going to get louder, and you're going to have to listen a little bit more carefully. And eventually my fire side is going to say, okay, you win. I'm a little burned out. I got way too hot, and now I'm going to cool off a little bit, kind of like stick my feet in the cold mud, for example. My hair's on fire. I'm going to stick my feet in the cold mud, and the earth is going to help me bring everything back to center again. So it's such a cool practice because, like I said, you can look at everything in your life. You can, like I'm a Pitta person, so I might be drawn towards hot, spicy foods or chili or like a hot summer day with margaritas and chips and salsa. Well, I'm going to have a great time doing that, but the next morning I might wake up like overheated, so there's all these different ways to look at it. So, no big deal. I had a great summer fun day, with my hot stuff. And then the next day, I have some cucumber water and I eat a little bit of, basmati rice with some, squash or some vegetable that's a little bit more cooling. And then I'm back to good. It's okay. So
I like that because I've always known I'm definitely a Pitta as well, and a little Vata, but really Pitta. Like, wouldn't you say that we're the ones who get hangry or psycho hungry if we don't, like, we have that burning fire? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
So I usually tend to know a Pitta when I say, "Oh, are you getting hangry?" Like, because my husband's Kapha. He's more like he can wait till dinner. He can have like a handful of nuts and be fine all. And I'm like, wait a minute. As I'm eating breakfast, I'm like, what's for lunch? Like that seems very Pitta, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, really quick. So Pitta has got like a pretty strong metabolism. They're that fire. They're burning through stuff. Vata is kind of Vata people are pretty lucky actually because they are naturally thin and they're kind of burning calories all day long. It's a little bit different than Pitta. Like Pitta has strong digestion, but Vata is burning calories all day. And then the Kapha person is just definitely a slower metabolism, and Kapha people really want to wait till they're truly hungry to eat. Yes. Whereas Pitta people have to eat, 3 meals a day to make sure they don't burn through. And then the Vata person, sometimes they kind of naturally snack all day because that just works for them.
Right. I always joke when I go shopping with my mom, which is so rare, but when we used to be, we'd be walking and I'm already thinking like, okay, it's almost time for lunch. Like I'm trying to plan out and she's like, let's just go into one more store and let's just go into one more. And I'm like, oh, and I start getting irritated because I know I'm like getting hungry. And then she all of a sudden will be like holding a dress and she's like, does this look? And then all of a sudden she's like, oh, I might pass out. I think I better eat. She's that Vata. And I'm like, yes, I was trying to tell you an hour ago. It's just cracks me up. I'm like, well, but I love that. I don't think I've thought so much about it that I know that I have all three or all four of the elements, but I like the idea of it being a tool that you can learn to listen to, kind of see those warning signs, and then almost draw on that element that you need. I think that's a really cool thing that you kind of sparked in me. It's like, so I have that fire, but if I feel like I need a little more grounding, I can kind of visualize that I'm tapping into that earth and water kapha element that's already within me. That's a part of me.
Absolutely. So one thing that we say is that like increases like and opposite decreases. So for example, the hot summer day with margaritas and chips and salsa, that's my favorite example because that's hot, pitta, hot,
Yes.
Um, so if you keep adding more of the like items, you're going to increase whatever it is you're adding to. But if you treat it with the opposite, then you decrease. So, for example, having, well, you can look at some foods and see how the dish complements. Like Mexican is a great food, or Indian food, or Thai type of food, because you might have some spicy peppers, you might have spicy meat or beans, and then you have some rice, which is a little bit more earthy. But then they complement it with lime juice or cilantro or sour cream, and those are all cooling type of things. So you have like the sour taste, the sweet taste, the spicy taste, and then the cooling taste. So the cilantro and lime will counteract some of that spiciness when you're going to digest that food.
That's
So
great.
so you can look at it in it really just about everything. Like you can look at it in your exercise. If you are running and you're really running fast or hard or for a long time and you get overheated, the next day, maybe you just go for a gentle walk, because that balances that heat and cool, stuff like that. So some people will, some people really like CrossFit or, a high energy fitness class. And for some people that really works well for them, but for some people it overheats them. And for some people it's just way too much. So it's just interesting to look at how to balance things. You can look at it, exercise, food, relationships, your own relationship with yourself. You can look at it just about any way. So like increases, opposite decreases.
I love that. So I want to get back to the word balance, but before we do, what would you say? I'm sure people are listening who've never heard this before and are kind of already like, oh, I must be that. Pitta sounds like me too. Is there kind of a framework that you have for how people can learn more about, which one is their most dominant element?
Yes. And if you're open to this, Shannon, what I was thinking is I could send you a dosha quiz and then some notes about the doshas that you could include in your podcast notes. Would that?
Perfect. Yes. So I'll put
Okay.
those in the show notes for everyone to find. Awesome.
That would be great. And then I have there's several top Ayurveda websites that we can also tap into that people can start to look around. But I have a really good constitution quiz and a little write-up of each one of the doshas that I've created kind of over the years, based on my education. And those are really great resources. And we can just pop those in the notes. And then that is a good place for people to start.
Great. Well, one thing that my yoga teachers always told me, and I think this is timely since if you're listening to this show when it's coming out, it's Thanksgiving in the U.S. will be coming up here shortly. And so this is kind of their, rough idea or suggestion on how to find out which one you are. So imagine yourself at Thanksgiving, everyone's playing ping pong and they've got the game on and you can smell the food in the kitchen and haven't been eating all day because you're just anticipating that huge meal coming up. And all of a sudden someone from the kitchen comes out and says, hey, everyone, we just burnt the turkey. The food's not ready. It's going to take 2 more hours before mealtime. Right? So the pitta type, if you're a pitta and you're fire, you're going to be so irritated. You're like, what? You're like stopping the game. You're going to you're just like so frustrated and you're really going into that psycho hunger mode. The vatas, they're like, you know what? As long as I get a snack, I'll be okay. I just need to go and grab some, appetizer or something. And then the kaphas, they're just playing ping pong. They're like, what's the big deal? Like, let's just watch the game and play more ping pong, right? Is that kind of a good explanation?
Yes, absolutely. I like it. That is a great way of looking at how different people respond, how different types respond to
At
that
least with
hunger.
food.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I do love that you talked about, exercise and relationships and, how really this is a practice in learning how to stay or bring back to balance. And I want to know your take on, because I see a lot of stuff in social media, a lot of blog posts that a lot of, especially in mom circles too, where people just really say that balance doesn't exist. And I'm curious from your perspective, what would you define balance to be? And do you believe it doesn't exist, or do you think it's more that we haven't learned how to listen and learned what our own state of balance really is?
Great question. My first thought right off the bat is I do think balance is possible. I think that we have to refine our definition of balance.
That's good.
I think that is the most important. And the biggest problem, I believe, is that we are trying to follow everybody else's definition of balance. And, if the blog post that you read said, you're balanced if you do this and this and this, you're balanced if you say no to everything except for this one thing, or you're balanced if you got your top 10 things on your list done today,
Nice.
So I think the most important thing is, what does balance mean to you as an individual? Because just like your Ayurvedic constitution, just like your thumbprint is individual to every single person. So for me, I think we define balance based on how we feel.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I'm feeling scattered or anxiety or irritable, hungry too often, tired, if I notice I have a little darkness under my eyes, or I feel like my skin is dry. I mean, I'm just kind of looking at all of these things as signals to what do I need. And if you pay attention, and again, everybody's level is going to be different. Some people are going to notice a lot more things. Some people are going to notice very few things. But you can also look at your digestion. Are you going to the bathroom every day? Are you drinking enough water? All of these things are part of that balance, that big giant circle that is balance for you. So for me, what brings me balance is I really enjoy some time alone. I think that's really important, even if it is 10 minutes alone. With absolutely quiet time. Time in nature is really balancing to me. Being with my kids is balancing. Making a good dinner and sitting down at the table is balancing. So I don't believe that we can operate it for very long without some level of finding balance for yourself. So I think the most important thing, like I said, is just to pick. I guess you have to experiment a little bit to see what resets you. What's the most powerful resetter for you? And sometimes you have to mess around with it for a while, and sometimes you have to change it as the seasons change. But I was just thinking that the other day that I started this new cooking business, and I have not followed all of my normal guidelines for myself. Like, I get up and I'm off to the races pretty early. And then in some days I'm not done until the very end of the day, and I'm going to bed exhausted. And the thing on those kind of days, the things that brought me balance were drinking water, sitting down when I ate some food, listening to some nice music, that kind of stuff. But on a normal, regular day, what would bring me balance would be, a little meditation practice in the morning, a walk outside in nature. I don't know. I'm just trying to kind of give some examples. But I noticed that I had several days without my ideal balancing practices.
Yes.
And it was okay. I mean, it was just okay. I'm like, okay, here I go again, pushing, listening, pushing, listening, pushing, listening, and then if it comes back around and I finally do feel like I catch up a little bit.
That's really helpful. I think experimenting is good. And it kind of makes me think too, we haven't talked about our strive for perfect sometimes. And I think that, that alone can make us feel so out of balance because we're striving for this perfect that we see what other people are maintaining. And so a big piece of it sounds to me like, letting go of any notion of perfection really and being okay with kind of burning out a little bit and then resetting and then experimenting with this and oops, that didn't work, and just being okay to ebb and flow, because isn't that what the seasons are doing for us and teaching us to do?
Absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about the seasons. We're in full autumn right now, and I joke with my husband, and I know that we all feel this, but I think some people are disconnected to even the season changes. And I think you have to be intentional that as each season is changing, kind of to be self-reflective and have that quiet space you're talking about to really look at your life and see, because I think the resets, in summer are going to be different in winter. And so I was saying, I joke with my husband because I sometimes feel like a bear in the winter. Like I already am preparing, like I'm freezing meals, and we live in a place where, when it snows, like you don't leave. And I just want to like crawl in that cave and not get on the social media. And so that's me kind of tapping into what's going to bring me to balance this winter. What would you say, some suggestions, maybe we just talk about autumn in particular, that each of the doshas could start to do as you are looking at the season, what you can do in your own life to get quiet a little bit and see what you need for your reset?
Yes. I don't know if it's just for me, but I feel like as a community in our town, in our city, in our area, I think fall is a vata season, so air and ether space. And I feel like it's the hardest transition of season for everyone because, and I don't know if I can be really articulate about this right now without going into more detail, but one thing I wanted to mention too is that regardless of what your constitution is, like I'm Pitta, you're Pitta, my sister's Kapha, my friend is Vata, we're all going to be affected by the seasons a little bit differently, but we can all kind of do the same things and benefit from that. So the Pitta, the Vata, the Kapha person all can do the same practices to transition during the fall season, and it's going to be productive for everyone. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. That's great. That's what I'm looking
yeah.
for.
So we don't necessarily have to, for every single thing, we don't necessarily have to look at our constitution to make any decisions, because sometimes we can just go with a broad spectrum vata balancing fall practice, autumn time. So I don't want people to get the toolbox of Ayurveda with the doshas is so valuable and so helpful. But in my practice and with my Ayurveda friends, we all kind of recognize that the doshas don't have to rule every decision that we make. It can be super helpful if we have a distinct imbalance, but if we kind of go a little bit more along that like increases like and opposite decreases, if we use that as a framework, that will also help us bring a little bit of balance. So when we're talking about autumn and the fall season, I just had a funny realization the other day when I was, my husband and I do, a lot of chores together around the house. And it's kind of funny because I grew up in a house with all women. So my four sisters and my mom. And so we did everything. We did the gutters and we mowed the grass and we took out the trash and, we sewed clothes, and we did the cooking and the baking. So I did everything. So I'm not ever stuck in the kitchen or stuck taking care of the kids. I'm, up on the ladder, cleaning the gutters out, while my husband is mowing the grass. And, So I was cleaning the gutters a couple of weeks ago before had a big rainstorm coming. And so I'm like, I'm going to jump up there and do it now. And the difference between, this is so silly, but this is so Ayurveda. So at the beginning of the summer, which is the end of spring, obviously, when you clean out the gutters, it's mucky and it's wet and it's heavy, and there might be some dirt and stuff that's kind of formed in there. And when you scoop out that stuff out of the gutters, it's heavy, and you can just kind of like thud. You throw it down into a bag or down onto the ground, it makes a thud. Well, just like 2 weeks ago, before the rain was coming, and I was like, I'm going to get all these leaves out. They were very light and airy, and I could practically just blow them out. And there wasn't so much muck. And I'm like, God, isn't that cool? I mean, the leaves, it's a full-on Vata expression of the trees and the leaves. It's light, it's airy, it's blowing, it's moving quickly, but that spring is more like heavy mud. Spring is a kapha season, so it's earthy and it's wet and it's a little bit heavier. And then Vata is the fall is Vata, airy and dry and moving. The leaves are falling, and this is lots of movement right now. The hot weather is blowing out, and the cool weather is blowing in. So the way for people as individuals can handle this transition more easily is by switching from your lighter, summery foods to more grounding. So fall is Vata, air and ether. You want to balance that with some kapha type things like heavier, earthy, wetter. So soups are great. You don't want to go too heavy on the soup yet, but warm cooked foods. Make sure you're using olive oil, ghee, coconut oil. Well, coconut oil is kind of a summery thing, but you can start to switch into sesame oil, which has more heat. So cooked foods, cooked soups, not too heavy, but just a little bit more warmer foods. I personally, my favorite Vata balancing practice is called Abhyanga. It's a self-body massage. So you get some massage oil. You can use olive oil if you wanted to, or but some kind of massage oil is really good. And massaging your body before you take a shower. That really helps balance the dryness that is in the air right now. And if you feel like you don't have time for that, just putting some massage oil on your feet before you go to bed at night is great for grounding, great for your digestion, great for calming your nervous system. Because Vata is an activator. It's an energy of movement. So it's such a busy time of year. School gets started again. The holidays are just around the corner. It's just kind of like a get up and go time. And we need to stay grounded, because then the weather outside is also getting up and going. So it's important to stay grounded and stay warm. When you go outside, you want to make sure you're warm enough and you're ready for that highs and lows of the temperatures.
Yes.
And,
That's so
those
helpful,
kind of things.
because I think sometimes I find that those really windy days, I come back and I feel so depleted. Like just from the wind. And so I love that idea. That's probably the good time to do that self-body massage or add the oil, to kind of ground. But I think that's great, because just our culture in general is so, as we mentioned, pushing and on the go and all that stuff that leads up to holiday season. So just taking the time, it sounds like, just having, the awareness of what you need. And Ayurveda is just another one of those ways to learn about who you are.
Yes, absolutely. Shannon, I wanted to touch base on one little thing that you said. We talked about this a little bit, but was that idea of being perfect. And I think,
yes.
The balance and the fall, the transition of the seasons, and what does balance mean, and trying to be perfect. I feel like there has to be in some way a reframing of the language that we're using to ourselves. And also I think there's certainly a comparing thing that we're doing with other people around us. They look so perfect. They've got it all together. How can they do everything and still be dressed and have makeup on and, whatever.
Right.
And then maybe we think to ourselves, I should, I should get dressed and I should have makeup on and I should look so put together when I show up at someplace. But if that's not you, if you don't normally wear very much makeup and you like to, be a little bit more casual, but you feel really good about yourself when you're dressed like that, then that's perfect for you. So I think it's really important that we kind of reframe what perfect means. And sometimes you just have to say to yourself, everything is perfect just as it is.
Yes.
And I think that is so important for us as moms, as friends, as sisters, as, children. And I think we need to give that message to our kids that everything really is already perfect. It's already part of you. And when you really accept and acknowledge that, then you bring balance. I mean, it's just the coolest thing when you take a moment to really accept and appreciate that it is already perfect. It gives your nervous system that just relaxing, like, it's
That's
all.
what happened to me when you just said that. I was like, truly. What a beautiful way to look at it, Gosh, I love that. Stephanie, thank you. I remember it brought back a visual of when we used to edit videos in college, and I was working with some professional, and we were trying to get it just right. And he said, "You know what we call this?" He said, "We call this good enough." And that always stuck with me. And I use it often because I think, you always want to get it to this next level. And it's like, you know what? What if it's enough? What if it's good enough? And that's kind of what I hear ringing in the back of my head when you said all that. It's like giving our listeners and ourselves permission to just be enough wherever you are, whatever you're doing. And when it feels like it's not when you don't feel like your nervous system is calming, that's a good indicator to say, ooh, what can you let go of? And how can you redefine if you're striving for something outside of yourself, and how can it just be good enough and right here, because it's already perfect, because this is where you are and this is where you need to be.
Absolutely. I love that. That's very good.
You have really inspired me, and I can't wait to check out the quiz and the links that you're going to share. So I encourage everyone to check those out at the show notes, freespiritlife.com, and it will be /11. And also, can you tell our listeners how they can connect with you, or if they have any questions or want to learn more about your work?
Great. Yes, I'm working on a new website, and it's not up and going yet, but we could probably include my contact information too, with my email, and I'm on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. Go with Steph, STEPH. My name is my Facebook, Go with Steph, and my email is gowithsteph@me.com. And I love connecting with people. I love to have conversations about Ayurveda. I always offer people who are interested a free 30-minute conversation just to see if they're interested in learning more about Ayurveda and working with me in some way, shape, or form. Right now, I'm doing a lot of cooking. I'm doing a 4-day radiance program and some family dinner type stuff. So that's really exciting. And emailing me is great, or messaging on Instagram. It's Go with Steph 2, the number 2, on Instagram. And I can get messages that way too to connect with people until my website's up.
Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and inspiration today. This is really been enlightening for me, and I really do like your presence and what you've shared has brought a sense of calm to my life. So I'm sure it's going to touch listeners too. So thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much, Shannon. It was my pleasure to be with you today.
Thanks so much for listening today. I'm so glad that you stuck around to learn more about Ayurveda. Go to my website, afreespiritlife.com/11, where you can learn more about your body types. You can download some free information and take a dosha quiz. And you can also find info there on how to get in touch with Stephanie. Thanks so much, and I'll see you next week.
Well, gather up all your brothers and sisters. Have your mom tell your dad that you love him and miss him. 'Cause tomorrow may never come.